Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, listeners, to the fourth installment of our show this Ramadan, which is called Life Matters, presented by myself, Wahida Badi, and also Tanveer Mohammed. What we're doing this week is we're doing something slightly different. We thought we'd give you something back in a different format this week, which I'm sure you guys will enjoy. What myself and Tan are going to do is that we're going to take you through our life journey individually. I'm going to give you an insight into Tan, and I'm sure Tan, with his clever questioning, is going to give you an insight into my life and what's brought us to where we are today. That's professionally, spiritually, and also certainly within the dunya as well, because we want to highlight to you that everybody has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with different challenges, and the key and what makes your life matter is the way that you overcome those challenges within life. So without further ado, Assalamu alaikum. Tan, how are you?
Wa alaikum assalam, and assalamu alaikum to all the listeners and all the people who've been listening to our shows. We're on the last 10 days, as they say, or we're pretty much completing the month of Ramadan, and I hope that whatever insights that we've given you has helped in one format or another. But more importantly, we thought that having this discussion, life matters and every life matters, and so do you, is very important, because you can relate to people who you would think or assume have got it easy, when really everyone's life's journey is something that tells a story. And I think it's very important, coming especially from a Sufi background, and in particularly the journey that I've gone through to where I am today, and utilize the skills, the knowledge and understanding, but more so the wisdom, to help others, signpost them, and not necessarily, hold their hands. Sometimes they do, but mainly being an inspiration or a support or a signpost for people to move on to whichever direction they want to go.
Absolutely. And I think also, because we are in the last 10 days of Ramadan Mubarak, it's also, and I'd like you to springboard off what we're going to speak about today and use these last 10 days to reflect on yourself. So this is all about self-reflection, looking inwards, looking into your qalb, understanding your life's journey, where you've come from throughout your life, and also where you're aiming to go towards, inshallah, as well, and see where you could maybe make those tweaks and changes within yourself. And obviously, just to highlight again, myself, I'm a life coach, as is Tan as well, and we do help people look for their life's purpose.
Indeed.
That's part of our journey as well, to help one another and to help the wider community, especially the Muslim community, to understand not only the purpose of life from an Islamic perspective and from a spiritual perspective, but also to give the relevant guidance on the dunya as well, when it comes to careers, finances, the ways family setups are these days, etc., etc. So without further ado...
Can I just also add, Wahida, as being life coaches on an international scale, we do transformational coaching, and that's a very specific segment. And we hope that something that you will learn from us, the invaluable lessons or tools or just guidance, will help you towards making right decisions. And we call it the journey, because everyone starts with their journey, and there is no specific criteria, because it's yours. It matters to you.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about journey here, just to give you a bit more of an insight, the journey that I'm specifically speaking about here is the journey from the cradle to the grave.
Absolutely.
Okay? Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted us with life. How we use our life and how we use our self-conscious, and which is what sets us apart from the animal kingdom. We have a conscious, they don't. Is obviously the rights and wrongs that we do within our life. Off the back of that spurs on opening the avenue towards maybe the next test that Allah wants to put us through in our life. And again, based on the way that we actually deal with that tribulation, that test within our life will actually open up the next avenue.
But can I relate that to the month of Ramadan? Because we're coming at the last 10 days and we're going through the more spiritual element to it. And it's to understand that, Ramadan really starts from the month of Rajab to the month of Shaban and then to the month of Ramadan. And it's broken into 3 stages and is to develop you. Now, the beauty about Ramadan is that abstaining from the food, it gives you time to reflect. It's changing your body. It's getting you into a healthy format. It's resetting you in a natural, holistic way. But at the same time, you're getting reward for praying, for doing all the things. And we're aware that the main devil, or the fire element, as other avenues call it, is locked down for those 30 days. Now, the question is, after those 30 days, is what matters is where do you go from there? Do you continue or do you go back into reverse gear?
Absolutely.
And do the things that you used to do?
Totally.
And actually wasted your time and energy and misunderstood the purpose of the change. Now, those who have embraced it and have really wholly and solely from their heart have seen the difference and they want to keep that enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
The key to this is that now how do we stay motivated?
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. So let's start, before we get on to our motivations to move forward within the month, Tan, what I'd like to do is get the viewers, the listeners to understand a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure.
About you.
Sure.
Yeah, where you're coming from, how you've arrived where you are today.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously you are a spiritual guy. All right. You're on the Sufi path, alhamdulillah.
I like to call myself a follower and a lover.
Okay, good.
In the context. One, because we're forever learning and our ego should not be dictating us in our path, because the sincerity of our journey has to be like a child, is pure.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you then, Tan.
Sure.
Would you like to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, well, the river of life, or my journey, is I come from an East African background, predominantly Asian, mixed from my father's side Arab blood, and from my mother's side predominantly from the northern part of India, which segregates it from Punjab, Kashmir and Nepalese region. But the point I'm trying to say is we're 4 generations from Africa, and they're pretty much spread from east to south and to the west. Now, the background is from Africa, we migrated to the UK. And as you can guess from my accent, I've had the British education and gone through the system. And to cut a long story short, I wanted to become a pilot, went through the Air Force Academy and, pioneered on many great things, being the first Asian within at that age. And this is back in the 1970s, when we had moved there. So things were a lot different. And we lived in an area where we were the absolute minority, surrounded by predominantly white communities. There was only 3 Asian people in the whole school. So my childhood friend till now, we talk about many adventures of growing up during the skinhead movements and growing up in a very backward thinking working class community, but at the same time trying to fit into the communities that were there.
Sure.
And you've got to bear in mind, my mum came from an environment where she grew up as an English teacher and came from a very affluent background in that context, where my father was an engineer and he worked there. But anyway, my journey then started from going to university and experiencing life, living in London and seeing the world for what it was. And London being the capital of the world, it had everything and anything. And I loved London. The hustle and the bustle and the metropolitan life was something that, it's alive 24 hours.
Absolutely. You say that, and I'm a born and bred Londoner, so I can totally relate to that. Yeah,
and the thing was, because there was so much to do, so many things to learn.
We're a 24/7 city, if you know where to go.
Absolutely. So my journey really began there, where, I remember sitting with a very prominent businessmen for Prudential, and having discussions and where we got to in life and what we'll do. And one of my ambitions in life was to set up a charity and do work with the orphans and so forth. And I thought, what's the best way is to travel, go and see, and get involved in it right from day one. And while I was at university, I was also involved working with Islamic Relief and other charities and so forth. So I did a lot of things and got involved in activities, traveled around. And then my journey really was about religion, because the confusion was that which sector of Islam do I follow? Because at that time, the terrorism element was just developing, but there was a lot of divisions.
Okay, all right. Tanga, if you don't mind me asking, just to get a bit of a timeline on this,
sure.
Okay, for myself, for my understanding as well as the listeners. I mean, when did you, if you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
When did you start? What age were you when you started looking inwards and thinking that that I need to start? Or were you always a practicing Muslim?
Well, no, because I never went to madrasa as passe as everybody else would have. So I didn't come from the conventional Asian background where you had all these facilities, because those facilities in the area that I was in was not. And what we would term as the coconut, I was your typical coconut on the outside, but not really from the inside. I was very much traditional and desi, if you want to call it, in my ways. Now, what it was, it's the learning curve. And when I was at university, at the age of 23, 24, really, the journey began, because of the people I was involved in, from people in organized crime all the way down to Yasser Arafat's movement. So I was involved in a lot of things and learning lots of things. And then at that time, the Kosovan crisis had come up, and I got involved in the charitable work and seeing life for what it was. And Islam started becoming a very prominent role in my life, as to seeing, what's the injustice on the political side and what have you. Then I sat back and I thought, no, there has to be something. And the life-changing moment was really, as my good duty in the deed in Ramadan, was to take this blind man for Umrah. Now, this is my life's hurdles that really made the change.
Okay, all right.
This was the turning point. Now, you got to picture, this is a man I took with me. He was a founder of a Habib Bank. He was blind, semi-paralyzed. And he asked my mother for permission, can I take him to Makkah and Medina to perform Umrah? But my good deed was I used to pick him up during Ramadan to pray his Taraweeh and drop him off.
Mashallah.
But my friends thought I was drug dealing and doing all kinds of things until they followed me. And then the life-changing element was when I was in Makkah. Remember, I got there and we were doing the tawaf, and I said, look, I don't know how to pray. I don't know what to do. And he said something very prominent. He says, speak the language of the heart, but be sincere. And that really had a profound impact, because then I started talking to Allah. And you got to understand, in between that time, I lost a lot of friends who passed away. I had a lot of traumas in my life. I was very, very deeply heartbroken for many things that have happened throughout my childhood, and the instabilities in my family and all the things that go on, like most people are going through. So those things really played a prominent point. And then when I went round circumambulating the Kaaba, after the third round, I started crying like a baby. I hadn't cried for almost 11 years. And that was a movement. And I saw a living miracle, because I said, Ya Allah, I'm going now to Medina from here. Do me a miracle that I can pray in Medina for your Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I practiced, in those days we had to go by coach, a 6-7 hour journey. So I practiced in this little book I had. And the only other book I had was Salawat, because it was in an English translation. So I used to recite that, and I recited, and got to Medina. And as a life-changing thing, I ran excitedly into Riyadh al-Jannah. Yeah. And I was looking for the green carpet. Now, me being Asian, thinking it would be Pakistani green when it's an olive green. So I went in this section, this guy pulled me in and he says, just pray. So I prayed. And I thought, let me just do a dress rehearsal.
Okay. Yeah.
Prayed all that and asked the gentleman, I goes, where's Wahida Johnny? He goes, you're on it. I cried and I cried because at that moment, what was a miracle was my first salah was in Jannah for Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Subhanallah.
So that had a profound impact on me out of love.
Okay.
So from that, I prayed. I said, well, if it's working, send me to a man of haqq. I said, a man of truth, because I was so confused, like a lot of youngsters are. Do you go to this sector? Do you go to this sheikh? Do you follow Sheikh Google, or do you follow this person? There's so much confusion now that parents are saying, look, abstain from that. So when I got back after 2 weeks, I met my sheikh's disciple. And then from there, the follower was Sheikh Nazim from Cyprus. And it was a very unconventional route that I did not even envisage. And from that, I got involved in charities, in organizations, and done so many things, from publications, from organizing events to hosting, and so many things and experiences that I've had, and interactions, from meeting celebrities, sitting with people from very, very high end of society, the elite of the elites, living and interacting with those people, living the private jet set lifestyle and so forth. So it's a complete transaction of different things. But what I found was all the people I sat with, whether they were billionaires, millionaires, or just the man on the street, it was about your humbleness and what our Sheikh taught us.
Absolutely, most
And
definitely.
what the Sheikh taught us was be sincere to yourself and be in check. Yeah, that Allah is watching, He's listening, and He's hearing. And this is what Ramadan really involves. What people don't understand, and what I really, really, really appreciate, is that the whole month of Ramadan, how it is like that every day for a follower of Sufism. Yeah, very simple. And through that journey, I've been able to not just guide and support and help. And people ask me, what is it? I goes, look, I don't have any powers. I'm not anyone special. I don't have the knowledges or anything. But what I do have is sincerity.
Absolutely.
And integrity and empathy. And empathy is the key, because my belief is, just like I have friends who are involved in crime and other things, and these are people I've grown up with from childhood.
I see.
I always keep a gap of the door open, because whenever they see me, they stop. They say, how are you, bro? This, that, the other. But many, many people from that avenue have come through the right path, and they thank me. I said, no, don't thank me, thank Allah, because Allah's merciful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if we show that mercy to them, their time will come, and then their journey begins. And the beauty about life coaching is being able to show people where to start their journey towards the divine kingdom. And that divine kingdom can happen at any moment, at any situation, so you don't know. So it's evolving, and that's the reason why, to me, life matters, because it's which direction. You have a choice. Now, some people say, well, I'm destined to be bad, I'm destined to do this, I'm destined to do that. That's a choice. But you can change that destiny if you have the will. And the will has to come if you have the trust in Allah, trust in His Rasul, and trust. And it's very important that awliya, saints, are sent down as guides and signposts for your journey. And the problem in society is we're fighting about whether this is right, this is wrong, this, that, but we're not actually looking at the heart of the person and saying, look,
absolutely,
you might be a sinner. We're all sinners. Allah's created that way. We have our faults. We're not here to judge, but we're here to support each other. And Sufism, really, this is what I love about it, is it's about helping and supporting each other on a journey that we're all going towards. Now, if everyone's on that same view, holding each other's hand and supporting each other, you can't fall. Yeah, and that's the beauty about Islam. So the embodiment of you people experiencing this in Ramadan, whether you broke fast with your loved ones or friends or wherever you've gone, or, you did prayers or zikr, or you just had those eureka moments in Ramadan, each one will have something. Use that as the starting point for your journey and say, Ya Allah, I want to come closer to you. Show me and guide me and bring me closer to you, please. That's really, really crucial, and I'm sure you can share the same thing. Till this day, working with the government and being in education, being the head of the international school, all these things that I meet so many people. And the amazing thing is some of the most successful people are so simple and humble in their ways and in their habits that you kind of attracts like. I goes, but that at the same time, you have to understand that God Almighty has given you a set of qualities. Every soul is special to Allah because they're His creation. And we have to recognize what gifts, talents that you have. And that's part of your journey, is to recognize that and use that towards helping humanity. Yeah. And in Islam, it teaches you that you serve God's creation. And we're not there to judge, we're there to serve. And the most basic thing in Islam is to feed. If you can feed the poor, if you can feed the hungry, then that's man's basic need. But if you can help in other ways, feed their soul, feed their mind, and feed them, in the physical context, then you're accomplishing 3 levels in Islam. And Islam is built on that. If you look at in Ramadan, it's a summary. We fast because we're conditioning our physical aspect. Then we reflect. Okay, we pray, we nourish our soul, and then we read and we take wisdom from it. And that wisdom is something that we are learning in what? In mind, body, and spirit to move forward.
Yeah. Absolutely,
now, some people will say to me, well, I've done all this. How do I go about this? Now, first step, go to the mosque, go meet people, go ask. You don't ask, you won't know. Yeah, go read up, go check, go get involved in things. Yeah, even if it's a small thing, but start with something, and every step you're making, you will move forward. But the most important thing of all of this that you will learn in Ramadan is patience. Yeah, because your ego, is going to knock you everywhere. The whisperings, we call it whispers in the ear, is very, very important, because life matters is now you're going to hear all kinds of things in your head and confusion, because that's what the shaitan is all about. That's what the devil is about. And we're living in an era of where the Antichrist is we're in end times now.
Absolutely.
And now more so, it's so difficult. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, it's easier to hold a hot piece of coal than to actually follow the deen. So all I say is follow whatever you can, but do it with sincerity.
Wonderful.
And make that intention in your heart. Because one thing no one can take away from you is your intention in your heart.
Absolutely, most definitely. Yeah. Thank you very much,
Tanveer,
Brother Tanveer, for sharing your life experience with us and giving us a snippet into what it is that makes you the man that you are.
Well, I'm still trying to be a man, as they say, but I'm working towards it. But I hope a little bit of what's there will help you. That everyone has a story and a journey, but please begin your journey. But the most important thing to reach to Allah is to love Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I recommend everybody, if you haven't read the biography of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, go read up, get the book. Yeah, Martin Ling's is the basic one, but just get any book about his biography, read up, learn about his life. Everything you need to know, you will identify in his life.
Inshallah.
And from that will change. If that doesn't change your life, then I don't know what will. But make that intention, and inshallah, through the sincerity, Allah will guide you. And so the sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his message of how to live a holistic and happy life will manifest for you. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for all your time, and I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Brother Tan. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the last and final session, or segment as we call it, of our session Life Matters with Ramadan Radio Walls. I hope the last session has been insightful and entertaining, but at the same time you can relate to it. And all the other episodes that we've had, that it's been helpful and useful at some point. Like I said, a lot of it's touched because of the time scale. We have a vast amount of experience and knowledge within our field, being life coaches. But Wahida, I wanted to ask you, like how you asked me the questions, about my life and how it's been and the journey to where I am today.
Is this a section where I bear all?
Yeah, this is your bit now because I've been honest, and remember we're fasting, so you can't lie. So it's very important.
Absolutely.
What's really important is the life lessons that you've picked upon to highlight for the listeners. One that they can relate to, but also have that reassurance that, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
And there is something to be inspired by or incited by, or even just as an example. Do you see what I mean? Because everyone's journey is different. Everyone has a story to tell, and everyone's important and intriguing. And in the eyes of Allah, every unique person is important. So it's, as I say to all the listeners and the Muslim community and everybody really as human and humanity in general, you are all precious gems. We all have to discover what gem are we. And as my Sheikh also used to say, we're all flowers, different colors, different beauty with different fragrances.
Absolutely. But everybody has a unique quality.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now the thing is, we're like rough diamonds. I think that's the phrase that I would use or the term. I think everybody's a rough diamond, and really it's a question of actually polishing that diamond
and cutting it to the right carat.
Absolutely, so that we can actually hone in on our individual superpower.
Yes.
And when I say superpower, I mean the superpower that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained each and every one of us with.
And can I just hold you on to that with you? You've all got superpower because you've all fasted up until now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for those who couldn't, for illnesses, whatever, but your intentions are there. It's Allah's will. But those who have done it, you've done it with your willpower. With all the difficulties you've had going to work, doing the school run, surviving, cooking, doing all the things that you do in your normal routine, you've changed it, adjusted it, but you managed to persevere.
Absolutely.
And you took your last breath in your prayers before you went to sleep and got up early. You've got yourself to where you got to today because your will, and that superpower is what we want to tap into to move you forward. So Wahida, please tell us about your journey, your life, and share it so that it can be inspirational for others who can take from it and learn from it.
Okay. All right. I feel like you put me on the spot today, Brother Tan.
I have.
Okay. Where should I begin? I'm a born and bred Londoner. My family, my background is Punjabi, Pakistani.
Okay.
And my father actually came to the UK in 1950. So I think as far as families, Muslim families at that, and Pakistani families living and working and being established in the UK, we're one of the old lot.
First settlers.
Absolutely. Now, my upbringing, just to let you know, I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. Kind of like the baby of the family. Oh, I hate that phrase, but that's the one that my siblings use to this day. Now, I'm chuckling along because obviously everybody sees that and they assume that I had a silver spoon in my mouth when I was growing up. I'm not going to lie, that was my reality. Okay, but the thing is, as I progressed through my schooling years, I went to university. I was probably one of the first Asian / Muslim girls to live away from home, fortunately.
Okay.
And that was probably down to my dad more than anybody else, because my parents were actually very progressive within their mindset and their thinking.
So they're quite liberal, cultured, and forward thinking in the sense of seeing that, you have to integrate with society.
Most definitely.
Where you lay your hat is your home.
Yeah. But having said that, now if you were to look at this from a spiritual perspective,
yes,
my dad, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him Jannat al-Firdaus, never missed one namaz since he came to this country in 1950.
So really, his stability, his source of superpower was living the Islamic life, following the Sharia.
Absolutely.
At its, if we call it basic level, but more so in a country and in a society where in those days, in the 50s and 60s, Islam was like, if you pray, you don't pray, who cares?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's amazing. He's brought back all those values from Pakistan. And he
adhered to them to a T. So growing up, so you imagine me being born into this family, youngest sibling.
Was he strict?
No.
No, okay.
My father was not strict at all. Okay. And my father actually practiced Islam.
Okay, so he led by example.
Absolutely. He led by example, but he was a man, and I respect my father a lot, and he always will be my role model. Okay? Because he led, and what he led with was with the sunnah.
Subhanallah.
On top of obviously your fard.
So it goes back to living the example of what Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam
Absolutely.
taught. So the sunnah element to it.
Most definitely.
And it's evident.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember the times when me being about 3 or 4 years old, I'd wake up at Fajr time with my dad, out of habit, because obviously I'd hear my dad getting up. You hear somebody's gone in the bathroom in the morning, or tahajjud time, and me being very young, like I'm talking about in my formative years, 3, 4, I'd wake up, and obviously I'd sit with my dad. My dad used to read. He was my first teacher.
He was setting the example.
And he was setting the example. And then all hell would break loose when my other brothers and my sister would wake up at 10 in the morning because my dad would say, your sister who's 3 years old read Fajr with me this morning, or where were you?
And I'm sure every parents and siblings can relate to that, because it's an everyday occurrence in all families.
Absolutely. Well, we hope so, Tan. We hope so. And the reason why I'm saying that to you is because obviously as a life coach, I've come across many Muslim families, okay, that maybe Muslim by name only.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And that's the danger in today's society. And I've met them in my, obviously my adult life.
Yes.
In whilst I've been coaching them, and that's when it's become apparent to me that there is a stark difference in the level that people practice Islam. But anyway, coming back to my journey, I went off to uni, came back home, was a bit of a brown nose, to be fair, goody two shoes type of girl. Okay, didn't put a step out of line, that sort of thing, alhamdulillah, because that wasn't my test.
But that was a good thing, because although in our community it's a stigma, like, goody two shoes, or what we would term as geek and what have you. But in reality, what you weren't doing is conforming to the devil's throne.
Absolutely.
And his way of living. What you did, you adhered from childhood. And followed the principles that your father showed you, which was Islam.
Absolutely. And one thing that my father embedded in my mind as a very, very young child, and I still hold to that, and this is the way of our Nabi Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that was, my dad said to me, that our Islam, our faith, our religion is love.
Subhanallah. That's why life matters, because of love.
Absolutely. And my father embedded that in me. He taught me the basis of Sharia like you would to a child. You know what we can do, what we can't do, fiqh, what's halal. Obviously he didn't call it fiqh, I was a child. But he taught me like what's halal, what's haram, what's permissible to say, what not, other things like that.
He said it in a language that you would understand in the environment you're in. And this is where we're failing, aren't we?
Absolutely, we're failing. Absolutely. But I think the key message, which overlaps with the Sufi thinking, Brother Turner, I asked you for a bit of guidance on this, a bit of clarification. But that was that Islam preaches and teaches and is love.
Yes.
Because that's what our Prophet, Nabi Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, taught the ummah.
Everything is love. And my sheikh, he used to quote, he goes, the greatest thing or greatest gift that God has given to the sons of Adam is love.
Absolutely.
And the power of love is so powerful that you can conquer universes with.
Yeah.
But your first universe is yourself, like you said.
Of course it is, absolutely.
And it's so important because if you remember from our first session, we were talking about all the issues. And it's all to do with the emotions of love, heartbroken, whether it's through domestic violence, through drugs, through your loved ones, through a relationship, through losing a loved one. It's all to do with the heart.
Absolutely. And the other thing, and I'm sharing this with you all today, and I'm feeling a bit nostalgic because we're speaking, I'm mentioning my dad here, who's passed away. But, excuse me, my point is that
what about you? I just have a breather because I know you're getting a little emotional. You're probably missing, naturally you will, because from the way you're speaking, you had a very close affinity to your father. But what about your mother? Did she play an influential role as mothers do?
Yeah.
Or did she kind of take a back step and just let you naturally evolve with the guidance of your father? Because remember, a lot of people forget the father plays a very, very pivotal, important role in Islam, because if the father is not there in the house to guide and be that rock, the stability of the family collapses.
Absolutely, it does. No, to be fair with you, that's a good question. But my mum wasn't really an overbearing mother either. They were very balanced out. But one thing that I do want to share with you, and obviously if your parents out there listening to this, I want you to take a leaf from this. Okay. One thing that both my parents, and we're talking old school parents, because I'm in my 50s now.
First generation.
Yeah, so I'm in my 50s now, so you can imagine we're talking proper old school, like parent generation.
The first settlers, as we call it.
My parents were never afraid of apologizing to us.
You know, it's so important what you just said.
Yeah.
You know, because we live in a society now where parents think that they've got everything right, you do, I say. And children, unfortunately,
and that's a dictatorship.
It is. And you know, their school program, they're away at school learning to be taught, because the teachers teach them to empower yourself and make decisions.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's the conflict because the cultural and
they can't
parents
make a decision because they've got to ask mum, they've got to ask dad,
and the difficulty is they confuse cultural aspect to Islam, when Islam is very clear cut. It has the boundaries, it has the guidance, it tells you which way you move forward.
Absolutely.
And it's so pivotal for those listening in, you know, especially parents and young people, communicate with each other, because
absolutely, and that's the message that I'm trying to pass here as well.
Do it with love.
Absolutely, do it with love. And the other thing is, and again, this is something that my parents weren't afraid of obviously openly saying.
Yes.
And following the path of, become your children's friend.
Yes.
My dad was my friend.
Very important.
My mum was my friend.
Yes.
And they said, we are your friends as well as being your parents.
Yes.
As well as us being like your disciplinarians when you're younger, in a parent format. Yeah. Now that you're an adult, we can have a joke. We can have a laugh together. We can have fun together.
It's so interesting you say that, because the Prophet ﷺ taught there's three stages in raising your child. The first 12, from 0 to 12, you discipline them. Okay. And then from 12 to 21, you educate them. And then from 21 onwards, you befriend them. So what you just said has just echoed out what your father was really following the advice to. And today, you can see that the practice of the sunnah has not only benefited you, but it's actually been evident in your journey of your life.
Most definitely. And you know what the funniest thing is, I'm funny, not jokey funny, but I just mean as in,
as a metaphor,
as a metaphor. My dad didn't sit down and give me any madrasa lessons. I wasn't sent to any formal Islamic education institutions or anything. Yes, of course I was taught the Quran, but I was taught by an ustada.
But one-on-one. We're not as profound as they are today. I understand.
Yeah,
that.
you understand. But the point is, the principles of Sunnah I was following from a very early age.
MashaAllah.
And I was learning from example because they were practiced in my home.
MashaAllah.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So obviously I graduated. I got into my first job. Okay, my first job, I worked, my career has always been corporate. Okay. So meaning that I worked with the FTSE 100 organisations. I held global positions.
So you were a senior executive?
Most definitely, yeah.
Okay. So could you just give us an example of one particularly notable company that people can relate to that you were a very significant leadership position?
Absolutely. Well, there's Apple.
Apple Mac.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. My when I worked for Apple, and funnily enough, that was my first position.
Right.
After graduation, that was actually a European-wide position. I worked in the Apple head office.
MashaAllah.
Okay. And similarly, all of my roles involved international travel.
Okay.
So
that helped you get cultured, see the world, which I'm sure your father was relating to that.
Absolutely. And my dad, again, this is something that I know a lot of people can't relate to. And the reason I'm mentioning it today is because don't pigeonhole your career progression because you're Muslim. Don't feel that you have to hold your daughters back because we're Muslim and in our culture it's not permissible. Our Prophet Nabi Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in a hadith that if you need to seek knowledge, travel as far as China.
Absolutely.
Meaning that China is a metaphor for ends of the earth.
See the world.
Like go as far as you can.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I can relate to that when you're traveling and you see people, and I love interacting, seeing cultures and the language and the fusion.
Absolutely.
And what's beautiful about Islam, and this is a friend said to me, because wherever you go, you seem to know someone. They always invite you to their home and have something to eat, and you don't even know them from Adam. What is it? I said, Islam is a fraternity.
Absolutely.
But it's not just Islam with all other religions. But what it does is they practice the Sunnah.
Yeah.
And that practice of the Sunnah is an honour.
Yeah,
and it's done with love.
Absolutely, and that's it. You see, there we go. Back to that point. Love, Sunnah, what our Prophet taught us.
What we call the brotherhood and the sisterhood. And what's really interesting when you said that, when you're progressing and you're seeing the world for what it is, that's when you humble yourself and appreciate what you have, what others don't have, but yet they're the most happiest people in the world.
Absolutely. But then what happened was I started realizing that I was going through a bit of a spiritual awakening. Okay. So now if you fast forward now, so imagine I've been in my corporate career for about, 15 years or so. Yeah, I'd say 10 years or so. I started thinking to myself.
Was it a significant point or a milestone or turning point?
To be fair with you, I think I was getting to the point where I was getting very close to almost, I was touching, but I hadn't hit the glass ceiling in my corporate career yet.
So was it difficult? Being a female in a very high corporate authority, but at the same time, you being a Muslim, upholding your values and principles. Absolutely. I'm sure just within the Muslim community, you must have had a hard time. Especially when they say, oh, she's a high flyer, she's got money, high career, no one's going to get her married, and all the other things that come with it.
I had it all. Honestly, I had it all. But the thing is, right, I'm laughing about it because it was all said behind my back.
Yes, that's the irony,
nobody's going to tell you to your face. But coming back to my corporate career, Tan, I never met any executives that were Muslim.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Anywhere across the world. I didn't meet anybody of my caliber. I'd never had a meeting, let's say.
Yeah.
I would never be in a boardroom meeting where there'd be another Muslim across the table.
That you could relate to or translate to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And, these are the kind of things that made me look inward and think, I'm jet setting everywhere. All right, I'm staying in the best hotels around the world. I'm expensing everything.
You're living in a suitcase and you're
absolutely lonely. And what kind of satisfaction is my heart getting, my qalb?
Very
all right, okay, and that's what pulled me back to explore my spirituality. Now what I did at that time was that excuse me, obviously I still lived at home at that time. I wasn't married, but so I was still under the roof of my father. Okay, I started exploring my spirituality.
Right.
All right,
So
and
did
that
you,
led
did you
me.
go on a traveling journey for that, or did you go and see someone, or just
No. What I
discovered
did
it?
was I just started, doing the old. What does everybody do? They'll Google. They go to a few,
Practice Buddhism,
community
or do some
centers.
meditation,
Absolutely,
or
that's
something
it.
like
You hit the
that.
nail on the
Or
head.
start
Yeah?
yoga or something like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
But then what happened was, you see, now this is the thing. My family didn't support me on this journey, but they never stopped me.
Interesting.
Okay? And the reason for that
Yeah.
is that my father said, you've got to seek knowledge.
Yeah.
In order for you to value the Quran and the teachings of Islam,
Yes.
you've got to compare it to something, right?
Yes.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong
Yeah,
here.
yes.
You've got to seek knowledge.
But compare it to the comparative religion, what's available.
Absolutely.
So really, you tried tested what most of our community will adhere our children to.
And I'm sure
get
people can relate to
education,
this.
have a good career, profession,
Yeah.
big house, everything, what the world will expect.
Absolutely.
But what's missing is the nourishment of your soul.
I didn't have that.
Yes,
Okay.
that's very interesting.
So let's fast forward now. The most turbulent, the most traumatic thing that was the massive turning point for my spirituality was that my father passed away.
Yes, naturally it will be.
Okay, my father went into hospital for a routine. You need to understand my father was somebody that never missed that. Read finished one Quran in 1 week, every week.
So he was your pillar and rock, wasn't
Absolutely.
he? Yeah.
He passed away. My world shattered.
Yes.
Totally.
But it's interesting because your world shattered there, but it wasn't. That was the turning point for you to discover Allah.
Absolutely.
And that was the excuse.
And when they say hold on to the rope of Allah.
Yeah.
So that was my point, my lowest point in my life, where I had the depression.
Yeah.
I had the anxiety, referring back to our previous shows.
Yes.
Okay, where I had the trauma.
You had the heart broken.
I had the heart, my heart was massively
broken. And the love
broken.
wasn't coming.
And my father was my lifeline to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because I was getting my spiritual nourishment from my father.
Yes. But now he was out of the equation.
Absolutely. So what I had to do, I had to pick myself up.
Yes.
I'm talking tan. The day my father died, I was wearing acrylic nails, tan.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't do wudu even with acrylic nails. Can you just? I'm sorry. I'm sure the sisters out there can relate.
Yeah. Because you were lost.
I was lost, because I was searching, but I wasn't finding that spiritual. And so basically, I'm talking total revamp of my life.
But it's acceptable because you're through that. You're going through that process.
And everybody needs to start somewhere. If there's one point I can make today, everybody needs to start from somewhere and get on track. Please keep going. There are people like me and Tan out there to support you. You can get in touch with us through the radio. And we're through the station.
But can I just ask you a significant point? After your father passing away and you discovered Islam, you went through that journey and everything. And today, when you reflect back, everything that your father was doing, you're doing that now, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Isn't that the irony?
That is totally the irony. And the funniest thing is, Tan, now I'm learning the references through Hadith and through the Quran for the actions that my father, obviously lived his life.
So the legacy continues. And this goes back to what you were saying as coaches, is when we start from the cradle to the grave, what is interesting is, I remember one of my principal coaches, he said, it's the legacy you leave after you pass away. Yes. That's important. And he says that you are totally on the journey and you have to give, but you will get in the next phase of the journey. And in Islam, as you know, we are always giving and praising and at the same time doing it for the love of Allah and Rasul. So please, I'd like to close on this. I think it's been a wonderful time spending with our listening audience in this month of Ramadan. We wish you a happy Eid celebration to all your families and a blessed year, and everything that is you are asking for is fulfilled in the month of Ramadan. And please...
absolutely. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually listen to all of your du'as and accept them and all your ibadah. Ameen.
Ameen.